had Jacob and Esau, and Jacob and Esau became the father of the Edomites, the father of another nation. Jacob had how many sons? 12 sons and one daughter, and Dinah was her name, and then the 12 sons. Those sons became the 12 tribes. But there is no tribe of Joseph, because Joseph went down to Egypt, and Joseph was there. Well, Joseph's 2 sons that were born to him in Egypt shared half a tribe, which was the tribe, or half tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. And so there are actually 13 named tribes, 11 regular ones, and 2 half tribes. They all go down to Egypt to survive the famine that was upon the land, the one that Joseph had prophesied about, the one that they had prepared for, and they stayed there, and Israel became a great nation. Do you see what God's done? God takes from Abraham and gives him a promised son. And from that promised son, that son has 2 sons. And one of those 2 sons has 12 sons. And their families are large. And they become a great nation in not too many generations. And do so in the land of Goshen, right outside of Egypt. And so that's how God brought his people from being just a small family to being a very large nation. The beginning of Exodus, where we start tonight, begins that another king came along that didn't know Joseph, that didn't remember what Joseph had done for Egypt. And this king, this Pharaoh, decided that he would put the Israelites to work because he became afraid. They were larger in number. They were growing fast. They were becoming powerful. And what they realized was, and they were afraid of, that if another nation came in to invade, the Israelites would pile in and defeat the Egyptians. And so they became very afraid of what used to be their very welcome guests, but now they made them their slaves. And we know that in the course of time, after almost 400 years, there was a couple, Amram and Jochebed, they had a child that they named Moses. Well, his name was going to be Moses later. They put him in the bulrush to keep him away from the decree to throw the babies in the Nile. And Pharaoh's daughter finds him, and it's Pharaoh's daughter that actually names him Moses because she pulled him out of the water. And he's raised by his own mom because Miriam, the older sister, is there in the bulrushes, and when she sees the daughter of Pharaoh pull the baby, her baby brother out, she comes up, and I tell you, they raised a smart young lady. Because what does she come up and say? She comes up and says, "Hey, would you like for me to find a Hebrew nurse to take care of this baby for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said, "Sure, and we'll pay her to do it." Now, being the bright young lady that Miriam was, who did she pick? Her own mother. Her own mother was clearly, had a small child, Moses. She was already in the practice of nursing a child, and so she was already physically able to do that. So what of all nurses to find but her own the baby's own mother? And to get paid to do it. That made it even better. And so Moses' mother teaches him about the ways of his people, teaches him about God. And we know that he grew up in Pharaoh's household, but he sided with his people, the Israelites. What happened when he was 40 years old? You remember? He killed an Egyptian that was mistreating one of the Israelites. What happened the next day? Okay, there are 2 Israelites fighting, and when he goes to break them up, what does the one say? Are you going to kill me like you did that Egyptian? And he realized that he wasn't, he hadn't done it completely in secret like he thought. And so he knew that Pharaoh would find out soon. And so what does he do? He left. Where'd he go? Midian. Okay. Goes to the land of Midian. What's he do in Midian? He finds a wife first, doesn't he? He goes and takes care of Jethro's 7 daughters, and ends up staying with Jethro, and you know, of course, you never thought of the Beverly Hillbillies, but Jethro was named after somebody in the Bible, but it was. It's hard to think of somebody being intelligent with that name. You know, that show ruined that name as far as that goes. But he was a smart man.
He was a priest of Midian, though.
Yeah, he's a priest of Midian, and he's the one in the story tonight. It won't be really what we get to look at. But when Moses gets the people out of the land and they're out in the wilderness, and Moses is worn out day in and day out, sitting down and deciding all the things of the people, it's Jethro, his father-in-law, that comes up and says, hey, you need to get some help. You need to get people that are over thousands and hundreds and whatever to decide cases on a small thing, and then they come to you when it's something big that they can't handle. Well, anyway, he finds a wife. He marries Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, and lives there for 40 years tending sheep. And any of the kids remember what happened when he was 80? He was out on the mountainside one day with the sheep, and he sees something. Anybody remember what he sees? Burning bush. Yeah, he sees a burning bush. But what's unique about this burning bush? I've seen a lot of bushes burning. Yeah, it wasn't consumed. It didn't burn up. Now that's one I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of bushes burn up and burned, destroyed. But I've never seen one that was burning but yet didn't get consumed. And so he sees that, and when he goes up to it, God speaks to him, and God talks to him, and tells him what he wants him to do. And he wants him to go down to Egypt. He wants him to go down and lead the people out. And Moses doesn't want to do that. I didn't want to have any part of that. Well, God gives him a couple different signs. One of them was that he was to take his staff and do what with it? Throw it down, and what happened? Turned into a serpent, turned into a snake. Another one was he was to put his hand in his coat and he pulled it back out. What was it? Okay, it was leprous. And he put it back in and it was cleansed. And so, convinced him that he was to go down. One of the things that he's asked in the middle of this is he speaks to God and says, God, who am I to say that you are when they ask? And God gives to him one of the most important statements in all of Scripture. And he says, say to them, it is the I am that sent you. I am that I am. And when Jesus speaks to the people, they ask him, he says, before Abraham was, I am. One of the things in that term, that name, I am, it doesn't maybe seem like much, but let's think about that just a sec. I am does not mean I was, or I'm going to be. It means I am. It means I was, and I'm right now, and I'm going to be. It is a continuous action. It is a continual state of being. We all recognize there was a time that none of us existed. And if the world stands long enough, there will be a time that none of us exist on this earth going forward. We recognize that at some point we'll be gone from this earth. But not, God, He is the I am. Not the I was, not the I'm going to be. He's the I am. Anyway, and so God convinces him, and he goes down to Egypt. And he goes to Pharaoh, and he tries to convince Pharaoh with the same things that God showed him. And Pharaoh isn't convinced. it takes 10 plagues to convince Pharaoh. Those plagues attack the very core of what it means to be an Egyptian. The very first one of turning the Nile into blood, and then having the frogs come out of the Nile. Those, I can't imagine. Without being too graphic, I've been around, blood, a fair amount of blood before, like in the processing an animal or something along those lines. And anybody's been around a fair amount of blood like it, that's not a good smell. I can't imagine the Nile River being blood and just the foulness that would be involved with that. There's nothing that is more central to the heart of Egypt than the Nile. Almost everybody in Egypt lives along the Nile because it is the lifeblood of that nation. It still is today. And so those things strike at the power. Also, one of the plagues was the darkness. And Ra, the sun god of the Egyptians, was their strongest and most powerful and most beloved of all of their gods. And so, the fact that the God of Israel could make it dark was a real big thing.
I think Randy told us one time in a lesson that these don't represent gods in there.
Yeah, they do represent different gods that they had. And of course, the sun god being one of the highest and most recognized of all of them. They had different gods that they followed from those different things. And so, all those plagues were terrible. The death of the firstborn was the one that pushed them to leave. They plundered the Egyptians when they left. The Egyptians gave them gold and silver and such. When they get to the Mount Sinai and they get ready to build the tabernacle, well, they've got all those raw goods. The gold, the silver, the fine linens, all the things to make the tabernacle and other things, because they took all that stuff from Egypt. And so they're able to do all of that. So they have plenty of things to build those things with. You have a chart, a map on the possible route of the Exodus on map 5 on page 54. It calls it a possible route because we really don't know exactly the route. It's kind of hard to tell exactly the route. We do know from the text they crossed the Red Sea at some point. So we got that. So at some point they do cross the Red Sea. They also end up at Mount Sinai, which is down at the end, almost to the end of the Sinai Peninsula, down there at what is Midian. That is modern day Saudi Arabia, by the way. But that's down that way to the land of Midian. And they do make it down to Mount Sinai. So wherever they come from, the area of Ramses is what is another name for Goshen. And so we do know they started out in that general area, and we do know they ended up down in Sinai. It's just the route they took is kind of sketchy. But we also know they crossed the Red Sea. So it may have been crossing the Red Sea elsewhere. Part of the reason why they put it there as that is partly because of the fact that it is shallower up there, and it is more likely that, just because of logistics of getting all the people across in one night and what have you. Anyway, the Passover feast comes out of the 10th plague. It's called Passover for what reason?
The angels have passed over.
Passed over the houses that had what? The blood over top of the door and on the doorpost. So the blood. And can you immediately see the imagery of how that relates to you and me as Christians? That the blood of our Passover lamb is what washes us of our sins. It is the blood of our Passover lamb that causes us to be guiltless before God, to have God's wrath pass over us. And certainly there is a massive amount of foreshadowing. We could talk all night about just simply the foreshadowing of the Passover relation to Jesus Christ. the book deals with some of that. He deals with some of the passages, on page 56. He calls, in 1 Corinthians 5:7, Jesus is called our Passover lamb. And so it's certainly recognizable that those things are interlocked. There is a diagram that is roughly based on the description from the basic description of the what's in the tabernacle and where. There is a veil at the tabernacle between the holy place and the most holy place. The only thing in the most holy place is the Ark of the Covenant. And to enter into that most holy place, the high priest did it, and they only did it once a year. He did it on the Day of Atonement. The other things in the holy place were the altar of incense and the table of showbread and the golden lampstand. Those were encountered by the priest, the high priest, on a regular basis, but not on a once-a-year basis like the Ark of the Covenant was. They go to Mount Sinai. They spend roughly a year there at Mount Sinai. It's where they received the old law. They received the things about the Ten Commandments. A big portion of the book of Exodus, really for, when you get to about Exodus 15 or so, around Exodus 15 they get to Mount Sinai. And from then on, at the time they arrive there, that when they arrive at Mount Sinai, they fully arrive there at 19, but they're working their way there. At the time they get to Mount Sinai, the rest of the book of Exodus and all the book of Leviticus takes place at Mount Sinai. Exodus is somewhat the law, because in chapter 20, the Ten Commandments are given, and they're given some of the law. Also, toward the end of the book of Exodus, they get the description of how they're to build the tabernacle, the exact ways that they're to build it, and all the things that are put in it. And then Leviticus goes into more depth about the laws that they're to follow. It goes through the sacrifices that they're to make. It gives the directions and the rules for the priests. It also gives all the moral laws that the Israelites are to follow, and there are many lists of those throughout the book of Leviticus. This last half of Exodus and Leviticus are truly what you could call the law that came through Moses. And that's where the heart of that law is. And it comes through those two main books. Now, we call all 5 books, the first 5 books, the books of law, but generally speaking, there's not a lot of law in Genesis and the first half of Exodus. They're mostly just history. But the laws themselves are largely contained in the last half of Exodus and in Leviticus. On our outline, the study sheet I have, for Exodus, I pretty well covered that. Leviticus, chapter 10 in Leviticus describes a very important story. It's Nadab and Abihu, where they use fire that God hadn't authorized, and God strikes them dead for it. It's a very important lesson on doing things the way God wants them, and doing them in a precise order, with this precise ways that they should do it. These men didn't do this out of ignorance. They were Aaron's sons. They were priests. Had they lived long enough, likely one of them would have been the high priest. So these are young men that should have known better, and were being contemptuous and careless about how they carried out or tried to carry out God's law. And they were struck dead for that. Any questions on Exodus and Leviticus? Okay, the next book is the book of Numbers. Anybody want to take a guess how Numbers got its name? The number of people. It's that simple. There's 2 censuses taken. The first one is really big. It takes 9 chapters. You remember back when I first came here, one of the first sermons I did was on the prayer of Jabez. You remember the prayer of Jabez? That takes place in, that's another genealogy. That's Chronicles. But it's similar to this one. That's one in Chronicles. Never mind. Forget that. It's right there. But it is a genealogy like that. It's very similar. The genealogies run together. Numbers. But the numbers are the numbering of all the people, all the tribes. And it takes several chapters to do that, and it's the description of people. You remember how many men they came up with by any chance? Out of the people? Well, it was 602,000 men.
That was fighting.
That was the fighting men. Those that have been men 20 years old and older. Okay? So, if every man had a wife, in almost every society, there's more women than men. Okay? So, if every man had a wife, fighting age and above, you're now at 1.2 million. And if they had 2.2 kids, like Americans do, then all of a sudden, you're at a couple million. They had more than 2.2 kids on average. So to say that this is a people in excess of 1 million is a really low ball. Likely, very likely, 3 or 4 or 5 million people. That's crazy. If you've ever been to D.C., Washington, D.C., in rush hour, that's roughly 5 million people trying to be on the road at the same time. Yeah. I can't imagine going on a hike with 5 million.
Could you imagine trying to bring water to move one?
Well, that's the thing. That's some of the logistic things and some of the things that show the power of God. There's a lot of mana in that. And there's a lot of quail. Oh, that's a lot of birds. Yeah. Okay, Numbers has the censuses. And in chapters 13 and 14, they send out the 12 spies. And sending out the 12 spies, 10 of them give a bad report, 2 give a good report. Joshua and Caleb were the 2 that give a good report. You remember what the sentence was for the result of that? What's that? They had to wander for 40 years is one of the things. Also, everybody that was over 20 years old at that time was not going to be able to go into the promised land. Only Joshua and Caleb. And so what you recognize is that everybody 20 years old and older doesn't go in. And so the oldest person standing there that could go into the promised land was 19 right then. And then they wandered for 38 more years. Okay? So the oldest people going into the promised land, except Joshua and Caleb, would be 57 years old. So the group that went into the promised land was a decidedly younger crowd, with Joshua and Caleb being the 2 exceptions. And so they were going to bring in the children of those that came out of the land of Egypt. Okay, any questions on Numbers? Deuteronomy? Deuteronomy is, deuteros is the Greek word. Now it's interesting. Deuteronomy is in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, but it's got a Greek name, which is just the way it is. It's got a Greek name. Deuteros means 2. Yeah, it means, deuteros means 2 or second. And nomos is the Greek word for law. And what it means literally is a second law or a second telling of the law. And that's what it is. Moses, at the end of his life, gets up before the people in the course of 4 speeches, retells the majority of the old law. He pretty much outlines it again. It is in Deuteronomy that you have very notably when he gives the 10 Commandments in chapter 5, and then in chapter 6, you remember what chapter 6, the first few verses is. It's one of the most important passages you'll find in all of Scripture. It's Deuteronomy 6 where he tells about how they are taught to their children. It is in Deuteronomy 6 that he tells them that they're to talk about the laws of God when they get up, when they walk in the way, when they sit down. They're to do it day in and day out. It's to be like frontlets on their forehead where they can't miss it. And it is to be the great statement of the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 6 verse 4 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord the God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might." When Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? That's what Jesus quoted. And so, Moses gives that in the book of Deuteronomy. He gives 4 speeches. The difference with the 4 speeches, toward the end of them, he makes some promises to them. And they basically come down to this. If you do what God says, you're going to be blessed in the land. You're going to have all the blessings that the land provides, and you're going to do well, and you're going to prosper in everything you do. But if you don't follow God, if you turn to the left or to the right of what God has said, then you're going to go into captivity. You're going to be destroyed. All those things that you've got are going to be taken away. And so he outlines for them in no uncertain terms about what's going to happen if they do or if they do not follow after God. And so he outlines that for them. And he gives that to them in the book of Deuteronomy. And so, the main being second law and the second telling of the law. And so it includes all those promises.
Well, if there are 2 million Israelites, how many would it take to be faithful before they would incur God's wrath? I just wonder, I wonder where the dividing line would be. See, because there would still be a lot of faithful people that would pay the price for the unfaithfulness and the disobedience of the few.
Well, that's a good question. How many does it take for a nation to be declared unfaithful? And they largely, as a people, were unanimous to not go into the promised land when those 10 spies came back. The people, it was only Moses and Aaron and Joshua and Caleb that were for them. But yeah, that's a good question. It kind of brings to mind the discussion that Abraham and God had about Sodom and Gomorrah. And, God finally came down and said, if there's 10 righteous people, I won't destroy it. Well, we recognize it was only Lot and his wife and 2 daughters, and Lot's wife was kind of shaky on that. And so there wasn't quite 10 people there that were righteous in Sodom and Gomorrah. And so, I don't know if God holds that kind of number in regard to us, and what percentage that would be, I don't know. But I know this, that there's always been righteous people. When Jerusalem was destroyed, there was Jeremiah, there was Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were all alive and part of the nation at the time that they were taken away. So not all of them were unrighteous. The vast majority were. So put that back into context and just put it down where the rubber meets the road. Have we hit that tipping point in America? Good question. And it makes it all the more imperative that we remain faithful.
It's almost, you're not going to really know until after the fact.
Sure.
I'm not so sure there's any way to know ahead of
Yeah,
time.
that's exactly right.
So you just have to get ready.
Without direct prophecy like they had in the Old Testament, it's kind of hard to know. Yeah, exactly. So, in a way, what matters most is that we do what we're supposed to do.
Well, in the day of Noah, the thoughts and the intents of the heart of man were continually evil. That's why he destroyed the world the first time.
Right,
And there was only 8 souls left at that point.
right,
So that wasn't even 10 still.
right. Go ahead and think.
But, you know, it's God's the one in charge, he'll make that decision.
Right. Let's get into our questions, but before we do, Cammie is not in the Bible, but she's in our puzzle. She's the one that was chosen this week. So Cammie DeSalvos is in there. So just a reminder, if you want to have a chance to get your name in the puzzle, give it to me on Sunday. And there again, the reason why I need Sunday is because I, have to print these off. I have to make the puzzle up and print them off, and I have to do that, in the days before Wednesday night. So, also, I'm not going to be here Sunday night, so please give them Sunday morning, or you can stick them on my desk. I'll find them when I get back in the office. But anyway, okay. Any other questions on the story itself? Okay, let's go to the questions. Let's skip the first section. Like I say, the answers are at the bottom of the page, and so they're there. Let's go to the fill in the blanks, and can I get the kids to help me with the fill in the blanks, okay? The younger ones to help me with that. Aaron turned his staff into a snake, and Pharaoh's magicians did it too. To show God's superiority, what did his staff or snake do to theirs? What did it do, Katie? It swallowed up. That makes it a really good snake, doesn't it? A snake to eat the other snakes. But yes, it did. It swallowed up the other snakes. Okay, list several ways the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, foreshadowed Jesus. Stephen?
No bones broken.
Okay, there were no bones broken. You want to do the second? You want to do all 5 of them?
I'll know the second.
You don't know the second one? What's the second one?
Hanged on a tree.
Okay, get a little help. What about number 3?
Passover feast and the Lord's Supper.
Okay, the Passover feast and the Lord's Supper. Yeah, both. And of course, the Lord's Supper was given at the Passover feast. And so you get the rich imagery that's there. Jesus gave the Lord's Supper at the Passover feast. The Passover feast that commemorated the Israelites coming out of bondage and partaking of the Passover lamb. And Jesus, the Passover lamb, gave that. All right, number 4, what's that one? You got it, Stephen?
Christ the Lamb and Christ Passover for us.
Okay, he's the lamb, he's our Passover lamb, as 1 Corinthians 5:7 says. And then what about 1 Peter 1:18, 19, that last one?
Lamb without blemish and Christ our Lamb without blemish. And
Right.
blood.
Yeah, he's the lamb without blemish, and they were the sacrifice lambs without blemish. Okay, number 3. While at Mount Sinai, the Israelites built the
Tabernacle.
tabernacle and established what?
Priesthood.
Priesthood, yes, priesthood. According to Exodus 13:21 and 22, a pillar of cloud guided the Israelites during the day, and a pillar of fire guided them at night. Who served as God's first high priest? Aaron? Yeah, Aaron. And do you think the Israelites could have defeated the Canaanite nations without God's help? You can't do anything without God's help. Could they have done it with God's help? Absolutely. Yeah. According to Exodus 16, what did God miraculously feed the Israelites with while they were wandering in the wilderness? Man and quail. We did both of those later on. But multiple choice. And everybody call out. According to Exodus 2:10, who gave Moses his name? B, Pharaoh's daughter. Moses fled Egypt after he murdered an Egyptian taskmaster. The Israelites had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because they believed the evil report of the spies. They failed to ask for directions, wasn't one of them. Yeah, they believe the evil before the spire. Number 4, throughout the wilderness wanderings, who is Moses' right-hand man? Joshua. Okay? And Joshua is going to be the main character next week. And Joshua is the Hebrew name that is the Greek equivalent. What's the Greek equivalent? Jesus. And it is